Hi everyone, and welcome back to Kimbo's Comfort Kitchen. And today we are going to do, this is the first recipe in a trio, which is an apple raisin compote. The second recipe is going to be braised lentils, and the third is going to be wild boar with a reverse sear. And I'll get into that in that recipe, why reverse sear. It's quite important. But the compote is basically a country style jam. It's chunky usually. You can do purees, of course, but it's a much simpler version of making jam. And so let's get going with the first one, apple raisin compote. So let's start with the basics as usual. So we've got brown sugar. I'm using Demerara, and butter. This is salted butter. You can use unsalted if you want, but it's not really a big deal. And Calvados, a couple of Fuji apples, which I'm going to dice. I'm going to leave the skin on because I prefer, well, A, I'm lazy, and B, all the nutrients are in the skin, so I'm going to leave that on. Pinch of cinnamon, and I'm using Thompson raisins. You can use sultanas or golden raisins if you like, but it doesn't really matter. All right, so let's get going. All right, so the next step is I am heating up butter in a frying pan, obviously, and once that gets melted and starts to sizzle a little bit, I'm going to add my chopped Fuji apples to it and make them golden brown with some sugar, but we'll get there in a second. And simultaneously, I've got my raisins that are now soaking and warming up in Calvados. I want these to be a little bit softer, and you'll see what we do there. So I've just got this on medium-high heat now. I just added the brown sugar, and I've put into the apples and cooking in butter. I'm going to cook these off until they're nice and golden brown, and hopefully not burnt. So the apples are now exactly where I want them, so to speak. And you see they're golden brown. If I keep cooking this, the sugar will caramelize even further, and it'll probably start to burn. So that's what we're trying to avoid here. Meantime, I have warmed the raisins up in the Calvados. I'm simply going to add that. Let that cook off a bit. You're not going to believe this, but I'm actually going to add a little bit of salt. And I'm going to add a little bit of pepper. And now what I'm going to do is transfer this into this pot. And I'm going to let this simmer with a cover on it for about 5 minutes. This, by the way, was about altogether about 10 minutes, just short of 10 minutes for stir frying the apples. And as you can see, the raisins have plumped up very nicely. This is going to come out great. We'll be back. Here we are. It's been about 15 minutes on a low simmer. I've had it covered for half of that time, and then I took it off because I want some of the moisture to evaporate. I don't want it to be too mushy. And then from here, we are almost done. I'm just going to transfer this, and I'll show you what it looks like. The star of the show is a raisin apple compote with Calvados. And I should mention that I put a little bit of cinnamon in that when you weren't looking, or at least when I wasn't filming. But be careful, don't use a lot of cinnamon because it's very overpowering spice. Just a little hint, a dash, a soupçon, if you will. Now this is going to be the star of my next dish, which is wild boar on a bed of braised lentils, and this is going to go on top of that. So stay tuned if you want to see how that's done.